Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Tell Your Story. I'm your host, Todd Nesloni, and each episode I look to bring you a different guest who has encouraged, inspired, or challenged me in one way or another and bring them on to share some of their story in hopes that it inspires you to tell some of yours. I am so excited to talk to today's guest. I found her on social media, fell in love with some of her story, and can't wait for you all to hear it today. Please welcome with me Dr. Korie Grayson. Korie, kind of introduce yourself, tell everybody who you are.
Yes. Hi, my name is Dr. Korie Grayson. I recently defended my PhD last month in biomedical engineering from Cornell University. And now I'm about to do a postdoc position, research fellow at University of Michigan. So newly minted doctor in the house.
I love it. Well, congratulations, first of all. We got to start with that because I know that is no joke. And so bravo for completing that. But before we dive into some of that, I always start with the same question at the beginning, and that is going back to the beginning, which is when you were a kid, what did you dream you were going to be? And does it align at all with what you're doing now?
So, short answer, no. Initially, as a kid, I wanted to be a massage therapist. Like, I wanted to massage the stars. I met one, and she just told me how she gave a massage to Cher. And I'm like, oh, that's just so amazing. I want to do that. And then later, I was like, okay, maybe not that per se. I want to be, a chiropractor. And then so I went with my mom to a chiropractor appointment and was talking to the chiropractor about his experience. And he's like, it's more like running a business more than anything, especially if you're like have your own practice. And I was like, well, I don't know if I want to do that. And then I got to college and I was like, okay, I want to be a medical doctor. I want to treat patients and maybe deliver babies. And I shadowed for a doctor for a year and a half, OBGYN. And then I was like, yeah, no, the birthing process is not that beautiful as people think. And that patient interaction is something else. So
Yeah.
eventually, I'm a PhD. So I'm still a doctor. So some type of correlation, but just not that kind of doctor.
Exactly. So how did you end up deciding what you were going to do now? Like what was the thing that clicked with you that you were like, this is now definitely the path meant for me?
I think it started back when I was doing summer research as an undergrad, and I knew I really liked research, but I still had like medical school on the brain. But once I found I didn't really have the passion needed for medical school, I applied for PhD programs, and then I got into Cornell. And so that specifically shifted into biomedical engineering. So before I even applied to grad school, I was working at a biomedical device company making a graft for them. So more on the manufacturing side. I wanted to be more on the R&D side. So I knew I had to go back to school in order to move up further within that, ladder within the industry. And then so I just started my project and I got really interested in cancer research. That's what my advisor studied. And then specifically for me, prostate cancer, because prostate cancer took my grandfather 2 years ago. But before that, we have other diagnoses within the males in our family of different kinds of cancer. So I knew I wanted to focus at least in the cancer realm. And then so just been focusing on especially late stage or metastatic castration-resistant prostate cancer, since that's the stage where most deaths occur. And right now, currently, there's no cure. So my PhD work is just using kind of like a combination therapy and figuring out the mechanism on how we can actually treat cells that are and tumors that are at that stage.
Right.
And then I was talking, and now I have a postdoc. It's actually in chemical engineering, so it's a little bit of a shift, but I will still do some cancer-related work as well as some COVID-related work as well.
Wow, that is incredible. I've had a couple of friends who've pursued PhD. I haven't experienced it myself, but I know it is an intense process. Even just defending your dissertation alone is a very stressful process. So what do you feel like, throughout that whole process, what is something that you really learned about yourself, maybe that you weren't expecting to learn?
I think I learned a lot about having my own self-confidence. I really wasn't that confident as a kid, only during like maybe certain instances. But I realized within sometimes that academia research space, when you are relating your research or talking about your results and your work, it's all really about confidence more than necessarily it can be about accuracy. I mean, if you look at some of our congressmen and world leaders, they say the most asinine things, but they do it with such confidence, people believe it. So I think I've learned how to be confident and more reliant on myself. And then I just also learned how better ways I can advocate for myself as well. I always tell people, no one's going to fight for you like you are. So you
Mhm.
have to be your
Yep.
own biggest self advocate. And then so that has also translated me into being advocates for others and being, trying to increase the diversity in STEM. Because, being sometimes the only person of color or the only Black woman, it can be kind of disparaging. But I just want to show
Right.
people that regardless, how you feel like a scientist should look like, I'm here, I'm doing it, I'm a doctor. So I think that has really like kind of evolved and shaped me throughout my PhD journey.
Well, Corey, the way I found you was that you had a tweet that went pretty viral. I mean, I think your video that you have on there is almost up to 900,000 views. So
Yes.
talk to me a little bit about how did that idea come to like share that out there and then make that
Mhm.
video? Because I love the video too.
Thank you, thank you. So I participated in the Wipe It Down challenge. So it's just a song called Wipe It Down, and you're just wiping away the mirror and you're changing every time you wipe. And so with that video, I just saw it and I knew it was like on TikTok and I saw it on Instagram. And I was like, you know what? I think that'd be a cool way to kind of celebrate my graduation because I really didn't have one because COVID took it away. So I went to Atlanta, and while I was there, I visited my aunt who lives there. And so I had a graduation shoot. So I had my robe that finally came in, which was, my dad got for me, which I was really appreciative of.
Oh,
And then so I was like, all right, let's do this photo shoot. I'm already made up. I don't really like to put on makeup that often. So I was like, while it's on, let me go ahead and shoot this video. And
yeah.
so I did that and right in her guest bathroom. And I showed her and I was like, what do you think? And she's like, yeah, that's cute. That's cute.
Yeah.
And then I posted it and I just expected like the normal kind of reactions
Mhm.
or something I would get on my page. So, I just put it on Twitter, put it on Instagram, and I think I put it on Facebook too. And then next, it just blew up.
Mhm. Yeah. Well, I loved it because, I think people really resonated with your tweet that I saw because it's just that idea of, you worked so hard for something that you were ready to celebrate and be celebrated for that work. And unexpectedly, you didn't get that opportunity at this time to have that happen. So what was that like for you, like processing that I poured in years of my life just looking forward
Mm,
to this
mm,
day,
right.
and then it looked so different than what you were expecting?
So I think maybe around February, March, it started to settle in like, okay, this may not actually happen the way that I've been envisioning it for like the past year.
Yeah.
With COVID becoming more rampant and then the cases going up and the deaths, I'm like, okay, I think maybe at some point there might be a shutdown. And so it was a slow like realization. At first I got really sad. I called my
Yeah.
mom. I was like, Mom, you gotta cancel the flights. I don't think it's gonna happen. And then when I got
Right.
confirmation, I'm like, yes, definitely not gonna happen. I need to cancel everything. My dad was ready to go. Like everyone was ready to come and celebrate with me. So initially I even talked to my advisor and I was like, I think something's gonna happen. What are we gonna do? How's this defense gonna go? And he's like,
Yeah.
well, we can at least have 10 people in the room. And then lo and behold, nobody was in the room. It was totally virtual. The only people that were in the room were my friend Paige and then my mom. So my mom actually drove across the
Wow.
country to actually watch me defend in my living room. So she was sitting on this couch that I'm sitting on now and just was watching me while I was at the dining room table. So, I mean, a little unorthodox, but having the people there that were important to me, that were, helpful, always supportive, colleagues, even people I didn't necessarily know were in that chat or were
Yeah.
on my Zoom and watching me do my defense. And so even my dad, he dressed up, he had a tie
Oh,
on, he was like ready to go. And so even though I didn't have everyone there in person like I wanted to, I still felt the love. I still felt the support. I still got the text. I've still gotten a few gifts here
yeah.
and there. And so, I mean, it's different, but between like the video and the support from the internet and again, my friends and family, like this is like a really good graduation. I
Yeah.
couldn't do anything better.
Did you find it more stressful to be defending your dissertation on video than in person, or do you think being there in person would have been more stressful?
I think being in person would have been way more stressful. I was already nervous when I did it virtually. And I was more comfortable doing it because I'd already practiced it about 3 times before doing it virtually between like lab mates, and then my future postdoc position, that lab. And then so that made me more comfortable and I was just like more settled into it. So what made me nervous on the actual day though was seeing everyone come into the chat and I'm seeing their faces and I'm waving and I'm like, okay. So I could only imagine how much more nervous I would have been if it happened in person.
You know,
So
I love your story so much, and you said something earlier that really resonated and stuck with me. You said, being in this field of STEM and medication and things like that, there aren't a lot of people who look like me, and so I knew that I had to be. I'm sure you face comments, you face doubts, you face an even harder ladder to climb up when people have preconceived notions. How do you see some of that? Have you seen it already like very clearly played out in front of you? Or was it all just kind of what you expected the battles to face?
I didn't really expect to have these. So I didn't even know about the word microaggression until I started grad school. So just a little bit more of my background. I went to Norfolk State, which is a historically Black college and university, and then I lived in Atlanta afterwards. So I was always surrounded by people of color and even scientists that looked like me and were interested in things that I was interested in. So it wasn't until grad school where I saw more of the disparity and lack of diversity. But actually, at Cornell, they have one of the most diverse BME programs, but it still shows you how low the numbers are for people of color and specifically Black biomedical engineers. And so once I got there, then I realized how much my race stood out, or it made more kind of an impact with interactions as well. And so that's when I first learned about microaggressions and experienced my first microaggressions and saw a school that took a stance against microaggressions and was willing to talk about it and discuss, and as well as increase the diversity within our field and also the field of engineering. And then so that was the first time it became very more like apparent. And then when you talk to other Black scholars, like PhDs, MDs, we have very similar experiences and stories where we may not be looked the same as our counterparts, or we have just these different kind of trials and tribulations. But we're working. We're trying to make it better for the people that are coming behind us, advocating on their behalf, increasing our numbers, showing people different paths in different fields. And so, I mean, I'm not going to say it's like getting completely better, but we're working on it. We're definitely working.
Well, Corey, I've had a lot of variety of voices on Tell Your Story, especially recently. And one thing that we've been talking about are current events. And, for those who are listening very recently to this being recorded, you'll know right now, in addition to COVID-19, we are a country in upheaval dealing with police brutality, racism, the killings of unarmed Black men and women across our country. And we keep seeing example after example of it. And so, being a woman of color during these times, I think the first thing I'd ask you is, how are you holding up with all of this going on? I know it's nothing new to see these kind of things happen, but for so much of the country, they're experiencing this, I think, for the first time. And so, how are you holding up?
And so I've been asked this question, and initially I'm okay at best. During that time when after George Floyd and Breonna Taylor and protests were ramping up, I was concentrating more on writing my dissertation, defending it. So I really haven't had the full time to kind of process everything that was going on at that time. Because again, I was trying to get my PhD. So once I was able to process a little bit more, have certain talks with people, colleagues, how they felt, it's really something that you're like, wow, the world is finally taking notice of what is happening and how people are being treated in police brutality within the United States. And for us, and for me, it's nothing new. When Michael Brown, Philando Castile, Trayvon Martin, all that happened not undergrad, in grad school. And definitely was not the same response. But I think it really took a whole pandemic for no one to do anything and not focus on sports, not focus on, athletics or entertainment, for people to actually see, okay, this is something real. These are the stories of these people of color, and this is how they're being affected. And then, so I think overall for me, processing, it's just really just showing my stories, telling my story, celebrating other people in academia, sharing the mic with other Black scholars. And I think that just kind of like helps with me continuing to process these current events and what's going on. Protesting in certain ways, buying more from Black-owned businesses, advocating more on their behalves, again, highlighting scholars, and just calling out just the bigotry and the racism that we see from day to day. Those are just some things that are kind of helping me cope and get through this time.
Well, I was going to ask, how can other people be great allies to our friends of color during this time? But I think you just shared a great list right there of supporting Black-owned companies, of protesting, however that looks for you. I mean, I know we're in the middle of a
Yeah,
pandemic, so I think I feel like, if we were in the middle of a pandemic, the protests could be even larger than they are now. But even that's
right.
keeping some people at home. But like you said, passing the mic to people of
Mhm,
color and
mhm,
amplifying
mhm.
their voices, I think those are
Yeah,
great examples. Are there any others that people are listening thinking, I want to be a better ally, I want to do more than just lip service? Where would you
mhm.
say that you would recommend them starting?
I mean, it starts with the people you know, listening to their stories, understanding their stories, even like having like, wow, questions for them. I think really understanding how people are moving and navigating through this life based on skin color really will open your eyes to their experiences and not keep you kind of like in this bubble. And then also like working on things as far as like institutional change. What are you doing at your university? What are you doing at your job to kind of make sure that these changes are implemented, and asking for that change from your company, from your advisors? I feel like now is more of an opportune time to ask for these things versus maybe a couple years ago. It was kind of like a little taboo, but now people again are more aware. Even the NFL, as ironic as that is, they're more aware too. So
Yeah.
I mean, maybe they're a little bit more open to change. But I think like those two things definitely will help amplifying, Black voices, Indigenous people, marginalized voices definitely will be something that you can do as well.
I think you brought up a great point that now is the time to use your voice to advocate for change. Because, like you said,
Mhm.
there are so many unexpected businesses and corporations who are actually acting like they're going to change. I mean, even looking at NASCAR and removing the Confederate
Mhm,
flag,
mhm.
those are huge things. And so I think if you're truly looking to be an ally right now, what you just said is beautiful about, pushing for that change in your own workspace, because people, this is going to be the most likely they are to listen right now. And so take
Right.
advantage of that. Don't just be enraged and outraged at this time. Use that to make
Yeah.
change. So I love that.
Yes.
Well, Dr. Grayson, you
Yeah.
are fantastic and amazing. And one question I always love to end all of
Mhm.
these conversations on is, if people are listening today and are only going to walk away with one thing, what is one thing you hope they leave with?
I would say the one thing that I would want people to live with, well, to leave with, is to be, again, your biggest self advocate. Make sure you know yourself, know what you want, know what you need, and fight for how to get it. I feel especially women in this industry, in this space, we have a hard time doing that for ourselves and people of color. But even if you're not, if you feel like you are marginalized or you are in a place where you can't always, there's always time to learn that. And there's time to make sure your voice is heard. The time is now. We live in 2020 where you have access to all these different mediums where you can express yourself. And I think that helps with also advocating for yourself. So please, please be your biggest self advocate. There are ways, and I will help you find those ways.
You are amazing. I have been looking forward to
Thank
this
you.
conversation and was so excited when you agreed to do it. And it lived up to all my expectations. So, Dr. Corey Grayson, thank you so much for spending some time
Thank
with me on Tell Your
you.
Story.
Of course, it was lovely meeting you, and thank you for having your platform and sharing that and amplifying my voice as well. I totally appreciate it.
Thank you. And thank you, everybody, for listening or watching another episode of Tell Your Story. Remember, you can check out past episodes on iTunes, Spotify, SoundCloud, YouTube, wherever you get your stuff. It's there. I hope today's conversation with Corey has encouraged you to get out there and tell your story, because every story matters.